We're happy to welcome Representative Dave Pagel. Thank you very much for being here, Dave.
Sure.
Questions? Any questions? Yes.
I just want to thank you because, according to the Herald Palladium, you were one of the people who said, hey, this new tax, let's let the voters decide instead of just make a decision executively. I appreciate that.
We've been criticized both ways on that issue. Some people say, well, why didn't you just fix it? You've punted it. Now you're letting the people decide. The problem is that the solution that we agreed on finally involved a change in the sales tax, and we could not do that without a vote of the public. So that is a constitutional change. So, to make that change, we had to punt it, as you will, but I think it's not a bad thing to have a public vote now and then anyways.
Well, excuse me, the alternative was to do something that would have been very harmful to schools.
There were several alternatives. The governor had a plan. The House had an original plan that we passed, but the Senate wouldn't. Then the House came up with another plan later, and the Senate came up with the Senate plan. Basically would have increased the price at the pump dramatically.
Yeah.
So in this area, no one would buy gas in Michigan anymore. You'd save the 40 cents a gallon and go to South Bend. But the House plan didn't raise any new money for roads. It did steal from schools and locals, and I was one of the few Republicans that voted against that, and I just really did not like that plan at all. I was actually pretty happy with the compromise that came up. I mean, the governor worked with leadership from the House and the Senate, both parties, and came up with the plan that we're going to consider for public vote. I actually think it's a pretty good plan. It's not exactly everything I would have chosen, but I certainly can live with it because it fixes the road problem. It doesn't change price at the pump, and it's a penny sales tax. It doesn't hit anybody all at once. It's something you can wrap your mind around. Well, I've got to pay another penny when I buy $1 worth of goods, but that will fix the roads. I think that's should be easy to sell, even though people are predicting that this is going to go down in flames. The proposal as it came out actually boosted some funding for schools and for local governments, which is not a bad thing either. So I've been pretty happy with the proposal. That some of the Democratic opposition was that, well, the sales tax is regressive, it hurts lower income families more, so something was thrown in there to fix that. The earned income tax credit was put back in, and I don't oppose that. That's for working families that are paying taxes. It gives them more of a credit for these lower income families. So on balance, I like that proposal. I'd like to see it pass. It's a little harder on trucks. Heavy trucks pay more. My truck fleet is going to pay more. It's harder on diesel buyers. My trucks are all diesel. There will be parity now between gasoline and diesel, where right now there's a 4 cents difference. And all the money that is paid in taxes at the pump will go to roads now, as before some of that was siphoned off to schools and locals and general fund. And so that was another goal of those crafting this package, so that everything paid at the pump goes to roads. So somehow they managed to, put all those things together into a pretty nice package, and it's a tax increase, but I strongly support it. We've been getting a tax break on roads for the last 17 years in Michigan, because our 19 cents a gallon rate set in '97 has been flat. Inflation has gone up quite a bit in 17 years, and every year we're using less and less gallons because we're getting twice the mileage we were back then. Mm-hmm. So our income from roads is going down, inflation and cost of road repair, to the point where we're now paying less per capita for our roads than any state in the nation. We should take pride in our roads. And if we can fix this for a penny, on sales tax, I strongly support the package, but be glad to take questions on it.
What if the voters defeat the sales tax increase? What's Plan B?
It's back to the drawing board. We'll probably lose another year of construction season. If this plan passes, we are making plans to take advantage of this current construction season. We'll be back to the drawing board. We've got a more conservative Senate and House than we've ever had before. I don't know what will get passed. If some people have said, well, we'll fall back to the House plan. The House plan was terrible. Senate plan was unacceptable. I don't know. I think we'll be in a lot of trouble.
I've seen it reported that Michigan has the highest load limits for trucks in the nation. Is that true, so that these trucks chew up the roads?
Could you repeat the question so the camera can pick it up?
Question is on our load limits for trucks, that in Michigan they're kind of high and aren't the heavy trucks tearing up the roads. Actually, I think no. Our load limits are based on per axle weight, and we allow like 18,000 pounds per axle, or a little less if they're closer together. So we allow more axles per truck. But if you change the rules and make us have twice as many trucks on the road carrying a little less weight, we're going to tear up the roads worse. I think the way ours is set up on an axle weight basis, those roads are built for those trucks. I mean, you can't drive one of those heavy trucks on every road. I mean, but the roads that they're allowed on, I don't think that's the problem. Although we are charging those trucks more now under this new package to get more revenue from them. Gene?
Because we live in Berrien County, and most of us live everywhere around Berrien County, which roads do you anticipate are going to be first ones to be improved that we can see here in Berrien County?
Which roads are we going to work on in Berrien County? I'd have to call Bill Meeks at the Road Commission and see what his plans are, or at MDOT, and Louise O'Casey at the Road Commission. I did sit down with Louise O'Casey, who runs the Berrien County Road Commission, and I asked him, well, how do you evaluate roads? And he showed me a map of Berrien County, and there are all these different colors on it. And he said, well, I can look at this and I can see when the last repairs were done on each road and what repairs were done. And he's constantly evaluating the condition of each road. I was pretty impressed with the system they have in place for evaluating roads. I know we're working on M139 finally between Berrien and Niles. That was sorely needed, but beyond that, I couldn't predict individual roads. Melissa?
Kind of going back to Plan B and the fact that I was listening to something the other day, and they were talking about the budget, and that the budget, we're going to have more of a deficit with our budget due to, and I'm going to ask you to explain this because I didn't quite understand it, and what is in a place where I could ask them to do it, on the tax credits that businesses seem to be cashing in on. Can you explain that a little bit more than they did?
My understanding, we're facing, you're probably hearing a budget crunch. Even for this current fiscal year that we're in, we're coming up $300 or $400 million short. Under previous administrations, going back mainly to John Engler, the thought was, well, we'll attract businesses to Michigan by giving them money, basically giving them cash in the form of a tax credit down the road. We'll entice them to come. Not a good idea in the long run, because now we're paying the bill. Now businesses are meeting some of the requirements. They're doing good things. They're hiring more people, but as they do, they're qualifying for some of these tax cuts credits that were put in place under John Engler. And we don't know how many credits are going to come our way. We know that potentially it could be $400 or $500 million a year, up to maybe 700. It could be quite a bit less. We don't know until they file their returns. But we do know that this current year we're a few $100 million short because of those tax credits are coming in. And I know down the road that thing has been sunsetted, but we're stuck with it for quite a few years to come. I think there's better ways to attract businesses than that, but it's going to give us some budget uncertainty for years to come.
Is there a limit on how many tax credits can be cashed in a given year? I thought I read there was something like a total of $30 billion of credits out there waiting to be cashed in. And is there a yearly annual max?
I don't.
If they all cashed them in 1 year, ouch.
I don't think they can all cash them in 1 year based on the formula that it was set up. I was told that I think around 600 or 700 million would be the maximum we could be hit. But my knowledge on that is less than perfect, but that's my understanding.
That was a good question, Louis. I read that story too and
Well,
wondered.
I heard it, I just didn't quite, especially since we just passed this tax thing last year. And I was at a meeting with one of your colleagues, and they were talking about how, that was part of the whole deal on that was to eliminate those tax credits.
Right.
And then, of course, I read right after that where some company in Stevensville was giving this company was getting additional tax credits because Stevensville said, hey, we're going to say thank you. So it's kind of like, well, that's not what the whole thing was. So I wasn't sure how all this is, because I know municipalities and locals have been saying that this is going to hurt them a bunch. So I wasn't sure how this all was going to be put back in on a...
I'm not sure where all the budget cuts are going to come from to make this balance. I've been told we can do it by our approach chair, whose district we are sitting in. But he warned me in my corrections budget for the existing budget we're in right now. I said, you better find $10 million. So he says it can be done without hurting schools and local governments. So I'm glad we have that priority.
Leaves the prisons.
Well, there's a lot of departments that spend a lot of money in Michigan, and that's where we're going.
Yeah.
But that is concerning because a lot of budgets have been cut to the bone for the last few years. I mean,
Several, actually, years.
We're past bone on some departments. The fat's gone.
That's what I'm hearing from schools a lot.
On I-94, what is the partnership with Michigan and the federal government on I-94? I-94 is in such terrible shape. What's our responsibility as a state? And will this additional sales tax, which is not, when you're buying a big ticket item like a car, going from 6% to 7% is a big deal.
Yep.
How will that impact the I-94 and fixing that situation?
Well, that money can be used. The question is, how will our road funding package influence the repairs to 94 that the federal government shares some responsibility for? We use our Michigan funds to match the federal in a lot of cases to ensure getting the maximum amount we can. So we will be able to take advantage of all the federal dollars to the maximum. Other than that, specifically, I'm not sure that I can say. When I talked to MDOT about the various roads in our area, specifically, I was encouraging them to work on 139 between Berrien and Niles. He said, well, our number one priority in your district in your region, which is bigger, much bigger than my district, is I-94. And he said number 2 is that section. So I know these are priorities.
Well, since half of the room has lunch, perhaps we should allow our speaker and
Well,
half of the room to eat.
Could I just ask, follow-up question on 94 is, who makes a decision to widen 94? It's a major artery across the state to Canada. It's 2 lanes most of the way from Benton Harbor to east of Ann Arbor, except for this short little stretch in Kalamazoo that Fred Upton takes credit for. That road is too narrow for the amount of traffic, and you drive it to Lansing. I drive that road frequently, and it's scary. And that's why I think this big pile-up that we had over the winter, there's so much traffic, so many trucks and cars on that road, and anything happens and they just, no place to go.
I would love to see that I-94 widened. I drive to Chicago a lot, and that has changed so much in the last 20 years. There's places it's 6 lanes wide,
Right.
and it's a pleasure to drive compared to, it used to be 2 lanes all the way, and then you'd hit in front of the toll booths and come crunching to a stop, and that is so much, and all the exit ramps are improved, so I'm sure that lays mostly with MDOT, but
Is that because it was in the Indiana area? The I-94 in the Indiana area?
No, we're talking about it
In
going-
Chicago, no.
the question was more for going towards Detroit. Could we widen that a lane because it's so heavily traveled? I'd love to see that. And I'm sure that is in MDOT's, how they figure their priorities. It's certainly got to be expensive to widen a road like that, but
The oil gets into the more squeaky wheel, so how do we squeak?
well, we squeaked pretty loud a couple weeks ago when we had that crash.
Okay, we'll let you eat.
All right.